The holidays are finally over. Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy them, but I am so glad to be back to my normal routine of getting up, getting dressed, and getting going. I used up most of my basic ingredients over the holidays, so I am restocking for winter. So today, let's spend a chilly weekday morning together for some simple scratch-made restocking for winter and post-holiday homemaking. So I need to make homemade vanilla and homemade butter, but first I need to strain my milk kefir. So you can see I'm using this really cool lid. This is a kefir lid and it can strain the kefir without having to remove the lid. But I fermented this a little bit too long and it was too thick, so I did need to use a sieve. However, I totally recommend using one of those lids. I will leave a link for them in the description box below. But here with the sieve, I am just pushing the kefir to the side just so it can strain and get all those grains to the middle of the sieve. And that way everything that's going into the Pyrex is what I'll be drinking. And then the remainder, you can see here, the grains will go into a clean jar with about 3 to 4 cups of milk to ferment again later. I like to keep milk kefir around in about a gallon jar so I can just drink it throughout the week, but I actually don't have any because I gave all of my milk kefir to my in-laws for them to enjoy, and I haven't actually made any since before Christmas. So I am working on rebuilding and restocking this kefir. And this is timely because a few of you asked me to do a tutorial on milk kefir. So even though this isn't a full-blown tutorial, this should give you at least enough information to get started. I got my greens from Cultures for Health. I'll leave a link for them in the description box below. But what's most important is once you get the grains, you will need to use pasteurized milk. So I normally use organic milk, which is ultra pasteurized. The reason why you use pasteurized, not ultra pasteurized, is because pasteurized milk has the bacteria in it that is needed for fermenting. Ultra pasteurized, it is processed and all that bacteria is killed off through that processing. Raw milk will also work for milk kefir, but I don't have access to raw milk, so that's not an option for me. So pasteurized milk it is. For Christmas, my in-laws gave me this killer proofing box. I made the best sourdough bread I've ever made in my entire life with this thing. I'll share more about that in another video, but today I am using the proofer for my milk kefir because you can use this for sourdough, for kefir, for yogurt. You can even use it as a slow cooker. Just like sourdough, milk kefir needs to be at 70 degrees or above for it to ferment. And that's a little hard to control in winter around my house, especially because my kitchen tends to be a little cooler. I don't like to put my milk kefir in other rooms because I'm going to forget about it. So this allows me to control that environment and make sure that my kefir ferments perfectly every single time. Now, I know when we think of winter, we think of quiet and slow and rest, but really the winter solstice is the return of the light. Every day after the winter solstice gets brighter and brighter and brighter. I know for a lot of people, thinking about refreshing your home isn't really on your mind in winter, but for me, I love winter. I love this idea that it's the return of the light. So I like to refresh my home, and I'm doing that first by taking down my Christmas decorations and just cleaning things up a little bit. I have this cute little dried flower arrangement that I got from a small business owner here in North Carolina, and I'm just putting it in a little vase that I got for $3 at I think like Pop Shelf or something like that. It's a cheap little thing. So I'm just trimming them so they can fit in there better and arranging this just to bring in a little bit of color. I know we're still far off from spring, but I don't know. It's the return of light. I just want a little more color and a little pop of spring in my home as we move into slightly brighter days. In one of my videos, probably a month or so ago, I think it was right after Thanksgiving, I showed how I made that orange garland. I love that thing. I know I made it for Christmas, but I'm keeping it up for a little bit longer because it's so pretty. I'm also adding in some of my dried flower arrangements from fall, pictures of my little girl from when she was a babe, and a beautiful plate that I got from Portugal a number of years ago when we went to celebrate my father-in-law's 70th birthday. After all the Christmas decor, it just feels so barren around the house. So I just want to keep a little color and just put some stuff on the mantle to replace that Christmas stuff. I really need something bigger for the middle of it, but I don't have anything right now. So I'll keep you in the loop about that as I find something. Over the holidays, I did a ton of baking. I made a million sourdough babkas and cinnamon rolls and all sorts of things. So I used up almost all of my homemade vanilla. So today I need to make homemade vanilla, and I like to keep both vodka vanilla and bourbon vanilla on hand. You can use whatever bourbon or vodka you have on hand or that you want to buy. I am using Basil Hayden's, which is relatively expensive to use, maybe for something like vanilla, but I do believe that when we are cooking or baking with alcohol, whether it's wine or if you're using something like bourbon, I like to use the same quality that I would actually drink because that appeals to my taste buds. But you can use whatever you have on hand. This is a 1 ounce pack of vanilla beans I got from Amazon. I'll leave a link for them in the description box below. And I'll also leave the recipe for this, but honestly, you can use just about any recipe you find because they're all about the same. So I use about 1 ounce of vanilla beans per 2 cups of liquor. It really doesn't matter if you use a little bit more or a little bit less, and you'll see different variations, but that's a rough estimate. So what I do is I slice all the vanilla beans vertically, just so all that yummy vanilla bean paste can get out of there. And then I did cut them in half so they'll fit in the jar, and then I just fill the jar up. And that is about 2 cups of vodka. This will need to sit for about 4 months to reach its full flavor, but it is as simple as that. And then of course, it's the same process for the bourbon vanilla. After these sit for a while, they actually turn into about the same color, and it can be a little difficult to tell them apart without smelling them. So I'm just labeling the top of the jars so that way I can just know which one is which right off the bat. I like to use the bourbon vanilla for anything that is vanilla flavored, like a vanilla milkshake or vanilla icing, vanilla cake. And I like to use the vodka for just about anything else. But you can use them interchangeably or however you'd like. After the holidays, my house is a mess. And part of that is because we're home, all of us, all 3 of us are home for like 2 weeks, just kind of making a mess. No one's working, no one's going to school. I'm cooking like crazy. There's toys everywhere. And then we left on Christmas morning. We left all the toys all over the house, came back. It was still a mess because a mess will always be waiting for you. That is a fact of life. So other than getting my pantry and my kitchen restocked, I am also trying to organize after the holidays. And this island cabinet is a total disaster. Every time I opened this cabinet over the holidays, I was like, oh my God, it was so messy. I would just close it and then not think about it again because it was too overwhelming to even think about. But I have experienced this multiple times in my life where something seems overwhelming, but I spend more time worrying about it and thinking about how hard it is than it actually is to take care of. So I'm not sure if I really shared much about this, but for a long time, I was a full-time English instructor at a North Carolina university, and I found this same thing happen with grading. I just kind of stressed about grading all the time. It's going to take so long, but I just sat down and did it. It took almost no time at all. And this cabinet was the same way. This took like 10 minutes. I pulled everything out. Everything that I didn't want, I put on one side. Everything that I did want, I put back in an organized fashion. I vacuumed out the cabinet a little bit. The things that I'm taking here into the garage, I'm giving to a neighbor who owns a resale shop that gives to charity. And literally, that was it. It was one of the easiest things I've done as of late, but I spent the most time stressing about it. So hopefully this will inspire you to tackle that one thing that keeps stressing you out that I promise you doesn't take that long to deal with. And what's cool is I found this spray bottle in the cabinet that I didn't even know I had, and I just ran out of counter cleaner, so I'm making some scratch-made counter cleaner as part of my restock. So this is about 2 cups of water, a 1/4 cup of vinegar, and I just use a splash of lemon juice. I'm not really much of an essential oil person. I used to have some around the house. I don't have any now, but I wanted the lemon to just kind of cut that vinegar smell a little bit, and that's it. You just spray it on your counters and wipe it clean as you normally would. And had I not cleaned out that cabinet, I never would have known that was there. I would have spent money on some countertop cleaner that I probably don't like that much anyway. So this is a win-win all the way around. What I like about these really easy tasks like making vanilla, cleaning out a cabinet, making homemade countertop spray is that they're so simple, but they give us a lot. And I think when we're talking about something like a winter rest, but also the return of the light and the sort of rejuvenation of our spirit after it's been tucked away as the days have been getting darker, these things can kind of get us prepared and excited for what's to come. And I know that sounds maybe a little too philosophical for something like countertop spray, but these are the sorts of homemaking tasks that I really like because they're really easy, they're really useful. I feel like I've accomplished a lot, but I haven't really done that much work. But even still, this is work that keeps on giving down the road. I have countertop spray now for a couple of weeks. I have vanilla that I'll be able to use all the way through next Christmas. And then soon, as you'll see in a few minutes, I'll have butter that I'll be able to use maybe for the rest of my life because I made way too much. Winter is a great time for these sorts of tasks that are simple and that do feel restful in comparison to some of the more grueling tasks that we have to do in the summertime, like for instance, like gardening and canning and food preservation and that sort of stuff. But it's also rejuvenating because we have the fruits of our restful labors later to enjoy down the road. Okay, we need to talk about homemade butter. This is my first time ever making homemade butter, and I do have some questions. So if you have answers for any of them, or if you just have some observations about what I'm doing, please just leave some comments below. Nice ones, leave nice comments below, and let's build a little bit of a knowledge base together so you can also help me. But what I did here is I followed the recipe from KitchenAid because I wanted to make it in my new stand mixer that my husband got for me for Christmas. I had a really great Christmas this year in terms of gift giving. So I put all the whipping cream I had in my house in the mixer because I had a lot of leftover from baking that I didn't get to for the holidays. And then I slowly turned my mixer up to its highest setting. This is the new version of the KitchenAid Professional, so the highest setting is 10 and it's very fast. Again, I don't have access to raw milk or cream, so I use store-bought heavy whipping cream, and I had a lot of leftover from baking that I didn't get to over the holidays. Look, it was a total mess. Don't put that much in your mixer. I had cream flying everywhere. It was a total mess. But once you see that the whey has separated, you can strain the whey and begin to press the whey out of the butter. Now, the more whey you get out, the longer the butter will last. And this is where I have questions for you. What do you use if you make homemade butter to press out the whey? Because the KitchenAid recipe said use a spatula, but that was way too flexible. It wasn't doing anything. So I switched to a metal spoon, and that worked, but it hurt my hand a lot. Part of that is just because I have weak hands. I know it's weird, but my hands are really weak from pregnancy 3 years ago. They never got better. So that kind of hurt my hand. So I switched to the bottom of a juice cup, and that seemed to work the best. But I really feel like there's got to be a better way to do this. The butter turned out just fine, but I want to make sure that I do get all the way out so it lasts a lot longer. So if you have any recommendations, leave them in the comments below. But once all of that whey was pressed out, at least what I could get out, then it is time to rinse the butter. So I took a little bit of ice water. I didn't put the ice cubes in there. I just chilled the water with ice cubes, and I put the butter in the mixer. Now, the KitchenAid recipe said to whip it. So I used the whisk attachment, which I would not recommend, by the way, because the entire block of butter got stuck in the whisk. But sometimes, more importantly than knowing what to do, we need to know what not to do. So don't use your whisk, use the paddle attachment. Pour the chilled water in there without the ice cubes. Let it mix for about 10 to 15 seconds until the water starts to turn cloudy. Drain the water and repeat that until the water is clear. That will rinse the whey off of the butter. Doing something like making butter seems really difficult, but this was extremely easy. And really the only difficulties were of my own doing because I was just making mistakes along the way. But now that you've seen what I've done incorrectly, it'll be even easier for you. Making homemade butter solved a few problems for me. One, I'm almost out of butter after all of my holiday cooking and baking. And two, I had a ton of extra cream. So this solved both of those problems. I'm just putting it into a dish for now. I am going to portion these out into 8 tablespoons, which would be a stick of butter because a lot of baking recipes call for a stick of butter. And because this is my first time making butter and I'm not sure about the best way to press the whey out, I'm going to store these in the freezer just so they don't go bad. And hopefully I can keep them a little little bit longer, but you can see this is nice creamy butter, and I'm looking forward to making some toast with this in the morning. And I wasn't even planning on doing anything with eggs, but right after I finished this, my egg girl, who has not had any eggs lately because chickens tend to not lay eggs as regularly when it's cold, she did have 5 dozen eggs. So I am all stocked up on my eggs, which is perfect timing because I was almost out, and I will be freeze drying these so that way I can have fresh eggs. Of course, restocking for winter for you might look a little different depending on the things that you use, what you're out of, and what you need. But for me today, in just a morning's work, I have restocked some of the things that I am completely out of or soon to be out of, and now I have them in scratch-made forms that I can use in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead. Thank you so much for tuning into Moon and Magnolia's YouTube channel, where we elevate the everyday from scratch and at home, and I will see you again next time.